Brothers and sisters, I am so happy to be with you today, as I am every day that we are together. Welcome to Readings with Regina. And as you might imagine, I am Regina Jennings. Now, today's program is one of my favorites, and indeed, the universe has been talking to me. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you. I'll tell you more about that a little bit later because I want you to know how you can tell when the universe is rocking with you. Okay? When you get actual messages from the universe that tells you either stop, go forward, or you're doing all right. Okay. This is one of my favorite episodes that I'm going to do or read to you today because it deals with my girl Dessa Rose on board a car full. Let me show you a car full again. Where she led a rebellion, got the brothers free of their chains. Okay? And they took care of good business against those monsters who were prepared to move them from one part of the country to another for sale. Now, I want to remind you once again that Dessa Rose is a book, it is a novel, but it is based upon a true story that happened in 1829 where a pregnant sister aboard a coffle led a slave rebellion. Very important. And also around that same time, there was a white female plantation owner who was rumored to have kept enslaved people. Remember now, slavery was legal. So if you kept runaways and you were white or even black, but if you kept runaways and you were a white woman or white male, man, you went to jail, Jack, or you got fined a lot of money. Your reputation was smeared. So those two incidents happened in history. And what Shirley Ann Williams did, she's the writer of Dessa Rose, was to combine those two historical moments into one. So, those of you who have been hanging with me, you know that Dessa Rose has been captured. And the only reason that she has not been hung is because she's very pregnant. So, the enslavers wanted her to have her baby, so they could sell the baby too, then hang her. But guess what, brothers and sisters? Oh, I get so excited. Brothers and sisters got together, enslaved brothers and sisters got together, and a white guy. Oh, yes. And they freed Dessa Rose, okay? Because all of them admired her for being the leader, a black power leader of a rebellion. Now, let me tell you how they did it. They did it just like Harriet in song. They would come by and sing something like, tell me, sister, tell me, brother, how long will it be? Tell me, brother, tell me, sister, how long will it be that a poor sinner got to suffer here to be free? Tell me, sister, tell me, brother, when my soul be free. So, because I'm skipping part of the book to get to the good part for you. So Dessa hears these lyrics. She starts hearing them every night. Even the white folks heard them, but the white folks were like, well, darkies do sing. They sing all the time. But see, there are messages in the music. You hear that, brothers and sisters? I really want you to understand that there are messages in the music. So Dessa is listening to this, right? Uh-oh. Let me pull this out. Yes, click your name just makes me just want to let clicks, clangs, and codas is in the house. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. Yes. They always, that is so funny. I'm going to talk about that later. All right, James is here. James, right on, my brother, right on. Okay, here we go. So now, all right, where was I? I'm trying to get this back. Okay, cool. Okay, let me get this. Y'all know I'm still kind of newish with this. Okay, good. Oh, but listen, you see how excited I'm just thrilled with this section. Okay, so they were singing and singing and singing and dig. So Dessa knew something was up. Now understand, Dessa's in a basement. Okay, and she's chained, but she knows song. She know the power of music. So she was getting ready. All right, now check this out. I'm reading from the book now. They had come for her at night, Nathan, Cully, and Harker, whom she hadn't known. Jamina, praising the Lord in sacred whispers, had opened the cellar door and unlocked her chains. Free and scrambling up to the steep steps, Dessa had focused all of her attention on the stranger's whispered instructions, refusing to think beyond the next step. She was free, and she walked on, mindful of his hand on her arm, uncaring of anything else save the cautions and the putting of one foot in front of the other. Silently, she had thanked the Lord. She had thanked Legba. Well, let me show you. First of all, let me show you my Legba. I got Legba. Oh, yes, this was a gift. See? Legba is that double-headed God. I mean, you know how things can either go one way or another, or even another way? Let me show you also another version of Legba. Here it is. Oh, that's a bad African god. And check this out. Once the Africans in this particular ethnic group became Christianized, they still dealt with Legba. In fact, they blended Legba into Jesus Christ. So I thought I would just share that with you because it is indeed in the book. So she called on Legba, she called on the Lord, all the gods she knew, for Harker and Cully and Nathan, for Jamina herself. She would not be a slave anymore, not in this world. They had walked for a long time, Harker going before her, holding back low branches and vines, his voice whispering the presence of obstacles on the path so she could avoid them. It had taken a while for her feet to remember the gliding shuffle that, slow as it appeared, ate up ground. The coffle had taught her that. Remember now, her last steps were on a coffle. All right, so you have to learn how to walk in a rhythm so that everybody can keep up with one another. Okay, just as it had Cully and everyone else who had ever spent more than a day on one, she had learned quickly after the first few hours of hobbling along, she's remembering now, the manacle rubbing her ankle raw. This was on the coffle. She had known without being told that if she fell, one of the drivers would be along with the whip. Oh! Her feet were remembering. The muscles of her calves and thighs protested some, and it took all of her concentration to keep their protests from drowning out the remembrances of her feet. She didn't speak. She didn't think either. She was free. Maybe not as free as she would ever be, but she knew, without needing to think about it, that she'd never be less free than she was now, striding, sometimes stumbling, toward a place she'd never seen and didn't know word one about. She remembered laughing, now she's thinking. She remembered laughing weakly, leaning against the mulatto boy, on her arm, around her, an awkward pat on her shoulder. The midwife back at the farm say, "Less your time real near. Farm, had he, white woman, what is this?" She's going into delirium. Her own foot in the stirrup, Cully pushing from behind. She mounted the horse before Harker, and leaning back against his chest, tears sliding silently down her cheek, she had not known how bad she felt, how scared, how she had lost track of place, of time, dozing only to be jostled awake by the dull throbbing in her back. Remember now, Dessa's getting pregnant. Some pounding in her head. starting up out of some unremembered dreams to feel the sinewy arms around her, the beard, stubbled cheek against her face. Got you. On a smoky breath. At some point they rested, probably more than once. She remembered the sky through a canopy of trees, the smell of roasting meat, rest, her face against some coarse material, the warmth of someone's flesh and the dull throbbing in her back. She was bumped up and down, and something in her womb, she guessed, somewhere deep inside her. The baby pinched its limiting or its lining in its fist. It had rained and hard and soaking. And Harker laughed, there go the trail and the scent, as he pulled out an oilcloth and draped her in it. But the wetness of the rain was mixed with that other sudden drenching liquid. Any sisters listening to me? If you've been pregnant, you know what I'm about to talk about. That drenching liquid that made the horse rear, nearly killing them both, embarrassing her half to death. What would Harker think, her having no more bladder control than this? And little else. The anxious, broad-nosed face, a fiercely muttered, shush, and bear down, bear down, bear down, you gotta help. The core of her body uprooted. Lord, the pain, Lord, the blood. Oh my stars. So what has happened? Dessa is giving birth, okay? And what she thought was just uncontrolled bladder, that was the water that precedes the birth of any baby. And let me tell you, I just love what I'm about to tell you too. Boom. I've been thinking about Dessa and her being pregnant because I know what pregnancy is like. I've done it a few times. Now, I was like, this Sunday, out of nowhere, now I teach a class on Sunday to these, I don't think they'll mind. These are young people who are aging out of foster care, and I'm teaching them poetry. I'm teaching them, to put their emotions and their voice into language. Boom. Well, one of my students said, look, Miss Jenny, Miss Regina, I really want my best friend to be in this class. So I said, well, all right, well, who is it? Here come this child. This girl was so pregnant, I was like, oh my stars. You getting ready to deliver any day, ain't you? She like, yeah, she did like this little young girl. Cute. I mean, girlfriend's belly was like talking to me. So I touched her belly and everything. And I said, well, what's your name? This was my first clue that the universe is talking. Deidre. Now, what book am I reading? Dessa, 2 Ds, right? So I'm like, oh, ooh. And then I said, well, do you know what sex the baby's going to be? Yes. And then I told her how when I was carrying children, right, we couldn't know. The technology was not that advanced. So she knows what she's going to have. But anyway, the idea that I have a very, 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 very pregnant student, okay, who I can help, and I'm reading Dessa Rose, sister girl with that revolutionary spirit, okay? And she has just given birth. Oh my goodness. I know I'm on the right track. Okay, people. Now I'm going to go to, where am I going? Oh, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. Now, Linda Brent. She calls herself Linda Brent in this book, but her name is really Harriet Jacobs. And I also want to show you this woman as well. This is Lydia Mariah Child. She's a white woman that helped Linda Brent get her story to print. And what is so deep is that contemporary scholars didn't want to believe that this happened. They didn't want to believe that the incidents in the life of this slave girl really happened. But because Lydia Mariah Child had already supplied a lot of the references, they couldn't overlook it because they wanted to overlook this book. What happens to Black people in this country, and Black women in particular, and certainly Black men? This country wants to overlook it. And I'm determined that it's not going to be overlooked. You hear me, people? So I'm going to be reading now from Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. And from those of you who've been with me, you know that Linda and her grandmother and brother, they all have been sold within a family or given away to people within the family, and some of them were put on the auction block. And you know that Linda Brent's grandmother was cheated out of her hard-earned money. She was an enslaved sister, boom. But she could also bake so good that she would do all of her household duties for free. And then she was allowed to bake her goods and sell them at night. So she made a little bit of money that she saved. And do you know her mistress had promised her freedom when her mistress died and then reneged on it? Now, all right. On the appointed day, the customary advertisement was posted up, proclaiming that there would be a public sale of Negroes, small n, horses, and so forth. Negroes and horses were sold. I think you got that. Dr. Flint called to tell my grandmother that he was unwilling to wound her feelings by putting her up at auction, and that he would prefer to dispose of her at private sale. My grandmother saw through his hypocrisy. She understood very well that he was ashamed of the job. She was a very spirited woman, and if he was base enough to sell her when her mistress intended she should be free, she was determined the public should know it. She had for a long time supplied many families with crackers and preserves. Consequently, Aunt Marthy, that's what they called her, was generally known, and everybody who knew her respected her intelligence and good character. Her long and faithful service in the family was also well known, and the intention of her mistress to leave her free was also well known. When the day of sale came, she took her place among the chattels. I've already told you what chattel is, and if you don't know, Chattel, look it up. And at the first call, she sprang upon the auction block. Many voices called out, "Shame! Shame! Who's going to sell you, Aunt Marthy? Don't stand there. This is no place for you." Without saying a word, she quietly awaited her fate. No one would bid on her. At last, a feeble voice said, $50. It came from a maiden lady, 70 years old, the sister of my grandmother's deceased mistress. She had lived 40 years under the same roof with my grandmother. She knew how faithfully she had served her owners and how cruelly she had been defrauded of her rights and her resolve to protect her. The auctioneer waited for a higher bid, but her wishes were respected. No one bid above her. She could neither read nor write, and when the bill of sale was made out, she signed it with a cross. But what consequence was that? When she had a big heart overflowing with human kindness, she gave the old servant her freedom. At that time, my grandmother was just 50 years old. Laborious years had passed since then. And now my brother and I were slaves to the man who had defrauded her of her money and tried to defraud her of her freedom. One of my mother's sisters, called Aunt Nancy, was also a slave in his family. She was a kind, good aunt to me and supplied the place of both housekeeper and waiting maid to her mistress. She was, in fact, at the beginning and end of everything. Mrs. Flint, like many Southern women, was totally deficient in energy. She had not strength to superintend her household affairs, but, and listen carefully, but her nerves were not so strong, but her nerves were so strong that she could sit in her easy chair and see a woman whipped till the blood trickled from every stroke of the lash. She was a member of the church, but partaking of the Lord's Supper did not seem to put her in a Christian frame of mind. If dinner was not served at the exact time on that particular Sunday, she would station herself in the kitchen and wait till it was dished and then spit in all the kettles and pans that had been used for cooking. She did this to prevent the cook and her children from eking out their meager fare with the remains of the gravy and other scrapings. The slaves could get nothing to eat except what she chose to give them. Provisions were weighed out by the pound and ounce 3 times a day. I can assure you, she gave them no chance to eat wheat bread from her flour barrel. She knew how many biscuits a quart of flour would make and exactly what size they ought to be. Dr. Flint was an epicure. The cook, look it up, Epicore, the cook never sent a dinner to his table without fear and trembling. For if there happened to be a dish not to his liking, he would either order her to be whipped or compel her to eat every mouthful of it in his presence. The poor, hungry creature might not have objected to eating it, but she did object to having her master cram it down her throat till she choked. See, this is why I named this particular episode Pregnant Dessa's Amazing Rescue, Linda's Enslavers' Cruelty. Dr. Flint and his wife, they were some sadistic, terrible white folk, terrible enslavers. You dig? And many of our ancestors were owned by these sick white people. Notice something that you keep hearing though. They were whipped. 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 See, how do you make an African into a Negro? They were whipped. Okay, who's this? I know. Let me see. I don't know. Sa'a. All right, you let me know how to pronounce your name. Oh my, hey. That's why I'm sharing these books with you. You've got to know the true American history, and you won't get it regularly. If you get it at all, that's why I'm determined I'm going to give it to you. And I want you to have it for free, and I want you to spread it to your friends, your family, and even your African American aunt. Spread it. We should know our history. Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl was written during the 1850s, published around 1860. You ought to know that. You ought to know that Linda Brent actually lived, okay? You ought to know that there was a pregnant woman that rose up against her enslavers and slashed them. You ought to know that. That's in your history. Okay. All right. So what else did I want to say? Oops. Y'all know I get excited. Okay. How do I do this? Jeez. I'll get it in a minute. Okay, here we go. Got it. All right. So now our last book of the day, let me show you it, is Clotel. Now, where's that at? In the world is Clotel? I got incidents. All right. Nope. I want y'all to see the book cover. Wait a minute. Where in the world? Oh, here it is. Okay. Very good. Very good. Clotel. All right. Now, Clotel was a fancy girl. This is one of the daughters of Thomas Jefferson. Now, Thomas Jefferson was a brilliant man. There's no question about that. Absolutely. But he was also an enslaver and a rapist. What can I tell you? What can I say? People have multiple personalities, and his was one. Well, Clotel was the president's daughter, and she was a fancy girl. So she was able to get a buyer. How can I get? Oh, here we go. She was able to get a buyer who's a young white dude who wanted to buy her to set her up to be his mistress. So I'm going to read that in just a minute. Okay, where am I? Okay, Clotel. Oh, let me change this banner because I want y'all to know this. Let me see this. That's a good one. Okay, here we go. All right, now this is the fancy girl, Clotel. She's on the auction block. Okay, so the auction Barker, I'll call him, like in a circus. He's calling out all the sums of money that have come up to bid on this quadroon fancy girl. The chastity of this girl is pure. She's never been from under the mother's care. She is a virtuous creature. Now, this is what he's saying. Girlfriend's a virgin. That's actually what he's saying. Because he knows that a virginal, light-skinned black woman, she's going to bring a lot of money. 13, that's 1,013. 14, 1,400. 15, $1,500, cried the auctioneer, and the maiden was struck for that sum. This was a southern auction at which the bones, muscles, sinews, blood, and nerves of a young lady of 16 were sold for $500. Her moral character, $200. Her improved intellect, $100. Her Christianity, $300. Her chastity and virtue, $400. And this too in a city thronged with churches, whose tall spires look like so many signals pointing to heaven, and whose ministers preach that slavery is a God-ordained institution. Understand this, people. Slavery was not only legal, it was sanctioned religiously. Do you understand that? So white folk growing up in this culture believed all of this to be true, that black people or the Negro should be enslaved, God ordained slavery, and it was all right. What words can tell the inhumanity, the atrocity, and the immorality of that doctrine, which from exalted office commands such a crime to the favor of enlightened and Christian people? What indignation from all the world is not due to the government and people who put forth all their strength and power to keep in existence such an institution? And they did. And we're talking about 300 years. You dig that? We're talking about 3 centuries of bondage for black people. And this is after the genocide of the Native American people. Nature abhors it. The age repels it, and Christianity needs all her meekness to forgive it. Clotel was sold for $1,500, but her purchaser was Horatio Green. Thus closed a Negro sale at which 2 daughters of Thomas Jefferson, now he had more than that, but these are the 2 that were, auctioned off that we know of. The writer of the Declaration of American Independence, which is a great document, but it certainly didn't apply to Native Americans or black people, and one of the presidents of the Great Republic were disposed of to the highest bidder. So girlfriend Clotel was sold to the highest bidder. And what was she sold for? She was sold as a high-class whore or prostitute. Take your pick. I don't care which. It ends in a poem. Oh God, my very heartstrings cry. Dost thou these scenes behold? In this our boasted Christian land, and must the truth be told? Blush, Christian, blush, for in the dark, untutored heathen see thy inconsistency, and lo, thy scorn, thy God, and thee. Now, I'm closing for the day, brothers and sisters. And I actually wanted to read that little poem to you because I also want you to recognize how important poetry was during the period of enslavement. Okay? There was no TV, no radio, none of that. Certainly no internet. You dig? People literally wrote poetry, and poetry was an absolute form of entertainment. It was a form of teaching, and it was a form of intellectual development. Okay? Many of the educated read poetry. Now, I'll talk more about this on Thursday, but poetry is very important to the African American literary tradition because one of the first Black poets in this country was an enslaved sister named Phyllis Wheatley, and she wrote a book in 1773. Do you understand me, people? 1773, okay? Because her white owners recognized her talent and they allowed her to read and write. I just wanted you to know that. And why do I want you to know that? Because, like I said before, I want all of you to know your Black literary tradition in this country. That is key because it's also going to let you know who you are, and it's also going to let you know who you are going to become. And of course, it increases your intellectualism. So I'm going to say this before I sign off again today. Share my videos. These videos are educational tools. Share them with other interested people and know that you are loved. Know that. Whoever sent us to this earth, they didn't send us to this earth to look at TV. They didn't just send us to this earth to eat a McDonald's or, a cheesesteak. Although cheesesteaks are very delicious. But you're supposed to do much more with your life. Okay? You're supposed to right wrongs. I know you might feel helpless. Don't. If Dessa Rose could rise up, carrying another human being in her belly, you dig? And fight for her freedom, certainly you can. In any way that you feel comfortable doing. And I'm going to sign off again with this. We are living during a genocide. I am not going to separate the genocide of the Palestinian people from right now. Because this is what I know and what you now know. America, this land that the Native Americans called Turtle Island, it started off in a goddamn genocide. Genocides are awful. War is awful. Genocides are just worse because genocides affect normally unarmed people. And that's what's going on in Gaza right now as they are starving individuals and trying to cover it up. Don't let them do it. Don't let them do it. All right, my beloved. Lord, it was a good session. At least I felt good about it. So I will see you all on Thursday, and we will pick up the 3 books that we read from today. Y'all take good care and do something fabulous with your life. And look for the magic in your life.